The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hut, 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 hut. Hey, George.
Hey, I am so displeased with you right now. I am out of a spectrum of campers from happy to viscerally and decidedly unhappy. I am on the unhappy scale. I am an unhappy camper.
I'm just trying to imagine the camp you would send people to. That's like viscerally unhappy camp.
Well, I mean, it's like the Dr. Payne scale, you know? The camps. Yeah.
So, at what point do we make a joke about football camps? I feel like there's a segue into football camps here, but I'm just too tired for it.
I am. I also, I mean, you know, we can't spoon feed everybody these jokes, you know? I mean, like camps, football, I don't know. Work it out.
Get off your ass and make some humor.
It's like Chief Wiggum when, you know, like Marge finds the person who robbed her and like beats the mess out of him. And Chief Wiggum is like, yeah, I don't see the rest of you finding your own criminals. That's right. Walk away.
All right. So we played Tecmo Super Bowl. And
Are you sure about that?
No. So, so here's like a sort of synopsis version of what happened here. So we played Tecmo Super Bowl, and I had this grand idea because of a comment that a coworker, audience member made at work. We were talking about sport ball games, and they were like, "Oh, did you know Tecmo Super Bowl is actually still updated? There's like these crazy fans in the modding community that have been continually updating Tecmo Super Bowl with modern stats the way you would with like a Madden game." And so I got the insane idea that we would compare Tecmo Bowl to Tecmo Super Bowl. What I screwed up is that there's Tecmo Bowl, then the sequel, Tecmo Super Bowl, and that's the game that has been super heavily modded. So
Okay.
staring down...
I can follow your logic a little bit better now because from my seat it was like, well, we're going to play Tecmo Bowl and Tecmo Super Bowl. And I was like, okay. And then so I played Tecmo Bowl and then played Tecmo Super Bowl. And you're like, no, that's the wrong Tecmo Super Bowl. You have to play the modded one online. And I was like, but I've got this one. And it was like, no, you got to play the modded one online. I was like, but why are we playing two games? I don't know what's happening. And then you're like, okay, well, we'll just play Tecmo Super Bowl. I was like, okay. And you're like, wait, not the one for the Switch, right? And I'm like, what? There's one for the Switch now? It's like, well, it's because it's in our suite of nostalgic games for the Switch. It's like, because that's Tecmo Bowl. And I'm like, this has gotten way out of hand.
Yeah, no, it completely fell apart. And the thing is, if I'd had all this information at the start, I would have said, let's just play Tecmo Super Bowl because that's the one that the modding community seized on. And I want to see the original that community seized on. But because I was trying to do this insane comparison and I drew the wrong names out of the hat, it worked out in a way because when I broke down and was just like, okay, this idea isn't going to work. So we're going to just play the game like we would play a regular game and there will be no gimmick, right? We will just play the game. And the one we settled on is the one I would have said we should have played if we were just picking one anyway. So when the failure condition happened, the airbag deployed and everything was fine. So everyone survived the terrible accident that was the gimmick that could have been this episode. And it worked out in an extra fun way because now I get to say, if you like this game, or if you still like this game after this episode, or if you like this game more after this episode, right? If you want to go play Tecmo Bowl after this, don't go
Tecmo Super Bowl.
Well, any of them. Don't try and go find the cartridge at a flea market or something. You can go to tecmobowl.org and download any of like the last 12 years of real player stats hacked back into this game. This is still technically illegal. You're still technically not supposed to do this, but I like supporting the modder community, so I'm fine with it. So if you want to play this game after this episode, more or less than you do right at this moment, that link will actually be in the show notes. And yeah, that I feel like I'm pretty okay with that, right? 1991 game that the community has kept alive for the following 20 years. Like I'm okay with them downloading a ROM. Yeah.
It's closer to 30 now at this point.
So
yeah, how you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
1991 was about 30 years ago.
Don't stop it. So
don't do this.
Yeah. So do you have a nostalgia experience for this game?
Emphatically no.
You're welcome.
No, well, I mean, because like I pretty much have like a anti-nostalgia experience for this game in the sense that like if we have like a spectrum of like, oh no, I never played this, like I was not even aware that games of this nature existed until like way later than I should have been. You know, like I mean, sports ball games. You know, I knew like that some of the older like baseball ones existed for, you know, the Atari and stuff like that, you know, but I mean, as far as, you know, ones that had this, what's a nice way to put this level of nuanced detail, especially arithmetically, I did not know that such games existed because, and I'll get into this later, but I just decided to play Dungeons and Dragons instead of playing this.
Yeah. So I have an adjacent experience, which is I realized while I was writing my notes out for this game, because I was writing like, you know, played at Kevin's house, which was one of my neighbors. Almost all of the sport ball video games I played as a young kid were at Kevin's house because Kevin liked sport ball video games and I didn't. And so my experience with a lot of games from the NES, Genesis, Super Nintendo era is where all of my exposure to sport ball video games comes from, because that's the age that I was playing with this particular neighbor kid and we were playing these kinds of games. And that's not to say they were all good or bad. Like any games, some of them were fun, some of them were not, some of them were mediocre, but we needed something to pass the time. Like they still by and large were video games, but that entire class of video games, I only have memories playing them, not just with Kevin, but at Kevin's house, which means because him and I were like, we played outside a lot, which means we were probably playing like when it was raining or it was too hot or it was too late at night or whatever. Like there was probably an increasingly narrow set of circumstances that led to me sitting down and playing. I also remember playing a couple of hockey games with him, and I don't have anything against hockey, but I give zero craps about hockey. Like on my list of sport ball things I don't care about, hockey is even lower because I was born and raised in America. Most Americans don't think very fondly of hockey, right? So it's like, but I remember playing Mutant League hockey at his house all the time.
I remember, dude, they made a cartoon show about that, right?
Yes, they did.
I watched the mess out of that cartoon show.
Did they make the cartoon about the football game or the hockey game? Might have been the football game.
No, I
just
slap bet that they made one about the hockey game.
Not even close. I can barely. I know that it existed broadly. That's not worth slap betting over.
Yep. No, continue. I'm gonna look this up.
Well, so I mean that is essentially the end of my nostalgia experience. But what I will do while you are frantically looking for information to prove yourself right is.
Go ahead and plug us.
That's what I'm going to do. So I want to say thank you to new followers on Twitter and Twitch. People who've been hanging out in Twitch stream. That's always super fun because, you know, they post into the chat and I get to talk to them. It's exciting. Patrons, Patreons, people who donate to the coffee. All those links are in the show notes, where to find us on the Sochmeets, where to find me on Twitch when I stream the games we play. That's a John Hodgman reference because you just kind of cocked your eye like, what the hell are Sochmeets?
No, that's the second time I've heard that in the last like 24 hours. So
I associate that with John Hodgman.
I associate it with the TV show Glitch Text. So
Maybe they are also fans of John Hodgman.
I don't know. I mean, because the last person I heard say it was a 15-year-old teenage girl cartoon. So it was weird then also hearing
John
it
Hodgman's
from
core audience. I mean,
So yeah, no, we love you all. You all are the best, and honestly, the reason why we do this. So there was a Mutant League TV show where they played many sports, including hockey and football.
You know, I was going to speculate that just because from a media creation standpoint, that seems like the safest thing, right? Create a show and then field test the episodes that are heavy on a certain sport and then make more episodes with those sports in them, right? And that's how you like A/B test your franchise, right? Just the way Mickey Mouse comics kind of went away because it turned out that everybody wanted to read Donald Duck comics because Donald Duck has a personality and does things, right? And in the old days, Mickey didn't. And so they eventually just took all their Mickey Mouse comic writers and put them onto Donald Duck comics because those were the ones that made money.
Well, plus, I mean, Donald Duck is brave enough to not wear pants anywhere he goes. So, you know.
And Mickey only goes topless everywhere.
Exactly. I mean, you know, look, I'm just saying that, like, yeah, I mean, it takes some bravery to walk around topless, especially when you're sitting down, because like I'm not 100% comfortable with my body, you know, like sitting down shirtless, you know. But that being said, you know, like, I mean, to be pantsless, I mean, the only two people I've ever seen pull that off is Donald Duck and, for whatever reason, my son, who gives zero craps about wearing pants in the house, you know. So it takes the bravery of either a duck with anger issues or a 4-year-old to pull off that look.
The word hero is thrown around. No, we're not going to do that.
All too much these days. So visuals?
Yeah, we're talking about a football game, I think.
I don't know. Here's the other weird thing about Mutant League, though.
I feel like you're starting to give away a sense of your enjoyment of the game.
Nah, man. I mean, if people who were really into this have to Frankenstein it together out of like this episode, I'm kind of fine with that. Is that on IMDb it says TV series 1994 dash, like it never ended.
Yeah, the
like
implications there are mind-boggling.
I know, right? I'm like, is it still on hiatus? Like, I kind of want to believe that it is. So anyways, we're going to start a Patreon or a GoFundMe to
GoFundMe to revive.
Yeah. Mutant League.
Actually, not revive.
Anyways,
just get another season since it's apparently still running.
Yeah. It's just furloughed. Like it's just on hiatus. Okay. So visuals for Super Techno Bowl.
No, Tecmo Super Bowl. Tecmo Super Bowl.
Super. Yeah. Super Bowl Tecmo.
Yeah.
Bowl Super.
Yeah. They're really Nessy. And I literally have a bullet here that says Ness gonna Ness. But I think this is an interesting time in the Nintendo Entertainment System's history because this is when they started packing processing power into the cartridges. Yeah. And I don't know for sure that this game did that, but this I would slap that on because the quality of graphics between Tecmo Bowl and Tecmo Super Bowl is it's literally the reference.
Accurate.
Yeah, it's the difference I keep making is it's the difference between Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 3. And the only reason Super Mario Brothers 3 can exist is because they shoved processing power into the cartridge. And that's how this game feels. And not to compare it directly to its predecessor, but like the graphics are
Super Mario Brothers 3. My God.
Well, yeah. But the graphics are, for the most part, exceptional NES graphics. Like everything actually looks real good. Like it's the visuals are kind of like bright and colorful. You can always tell what's going on. The little cutscenes of like the near miss of like blocking a field goal kick or intercepting a pass. The little goofy halftime animations with the cheerleaders, like they all actually look pretty friggin' good.
Oh yeah, no, I mean all of the and I do feel that you kind of to lead into one of the other visual notes is I did feel that the cutscenes really did kind of add something to the game, because they're not gratuitous in the fact that they don't go on for ages. It's not like a cutscene starts and then 5 minutes later you're watching Titus awkwardly laugh into the sky. I mean, it's not like that. It's just a quick little blip, but it does help flesh out kind of the almost it's not tokenized, but the very NES graphics on the screen, like when you're actually running around. So when you do something particularly awesome, like you throw an amazing pass and the person catches it, it shows like that person catching it, So I felt that really kind of added to my experience. But yeah, no, I mean the graphics, especially when I played Tecmo Bowl, I was like, all right, this is about what I would expect. Feels like Excite Bike but football. And then when it was Tecmo Super Bowl, I was like, this has to be one where they added processing power onto the cartridge because they are night and day different. Like it does look like it was on a different system. So I think that the graphics overall I think they aged pretty well, all things considered. I mean, it's definitely not a Madden 2020, but it's pretty good.
Well, the thing that you would contrast between a later football game, even just in like the next generation, right? Super Nintendo Genesis era, is that all of the play, 100% of the play happens in a bird's eye view, right? Single camera, no changing it. You can't choose to pan up and down the field. It's always dead center on the action, and that's the end of the story. And I actually kind of loved that. Maybe if I was like a big sport baller, I would say like, oh no, I want to be down in the action. I want to feel like I'm on the field, but I don't. I see football because I'm, again, not a big sports person. Like I see it kind of for what it is, which is a hyper watered down version of a war simulation. Right. And so having the, like, I'm the general up on the mountaintop watching the troops, right? I'm not a player. I am the players, right? I'm commanding my side against the other side. And so having that bird's eye view kind of jives with the way I already think about most sports, which is I'm not an individual contributor. I'm this all-controlling, all-consuming deity figure in the sky. Like, that's actually totally fine with me. And that, I think, is the biggest difference between a sports game of this era and a modern one, particularly football games, because every modern football game does the exact same thing, which is the camera is over the quarterback's shoulder so that you have to look downfield and judge the throw just like a real quarterback would. And again, if I cared about football, that would probably be super neat. But seeing it up in the sky, seeing the X on the field, literally exactly where the pass is going to go, because it always goes there, and I just need to make sure that the player is there before I throw the ball or can get there before the ball hits the ground. Like, I'm actually super okay with that. And the visuals can't do more than that at this time. And I almost wonder if something would be lost. Like, could you play Madden 2020 with a Tecmo Super Bowl camera? Because that would be kind of amazing.
Well, I think that one of the things that you're hitting on, so obviously a core aesthetic for this game is fantasy, right? I mean, but which fantasy are you living? Are you the coach or are you the quarterback? And I think that's kind of speaks to which fantasy are you trying to live out? Like, are you the quarterback who you want to throw the winning pass down, whatever, like you want to throw the winning, the touchdown.
You want to sink the winning basket. Yes,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you want to be that, or do you want to be the coach of the football team and like you are coordinating everyone? And that was kind of one of the things that I felt, and this is actually more mechanics, so I'll save a lot for it there, but I felt like that this game doesn't do very well, which is, which am I, so like, am I the coach or am I the player? Because like you can cycle through which player you're controlling really fast and all that, which is in mechanics. I will say this though, they do a very good job letting you know which player you are controlling. There is a very, very bright one over the person that you is player one and an arrow pointing down being like, this is you, So at no point did I have to struggle visually with which person I was controlling. What I did with that information, I struggled with greatly, but I at least knew who I was controlling. Knowing what to do from that point is again more of a mechanical issue. I did struggle a fair amount with knowing where the ball was, So like this wasn't an issue when I was passing. It was an issue when I was doing running plays, So like where especially some of the more complicated ones where like you back up and you fake handing it off to one person and
which they lovingly animated and I think is kind of adorable.
Yeah. So like they kind of show you like trying to hand it off and hand off somebody else. I mean, once I got into the rhythm of it, I could understand it. And again, for somebody who's a sports baller like that, that wouldn't be an issue because they know what they're looking for. But for me, visually, I was just kind of like, wait, I'm sorry, where's the ball again? Which person am I? Like it was enough jarring and disorienting that it was one of the several reasons why I did not do too many running plays.
If you settle on wherever the number one is, that's the part of the universe I have direct control over. That way of thinking was working pretty well for me because there's what I think a football team is 175 players on each side, right? So the field is
at the same time,
very crowded, right? They also, I think they can bring their kids on Tuesday games, right? So they bring your kids to game day. So there's a lot of people, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of bodies on the screen at the same time. And no matter how high fidelity the graphics get, there's a lot of people on the field at the same time. So higher fidelity graphics, it's like I could see every hair in that player's beard. And it's like there's just a lot of people on the field, right? So having the gigantic flashing number one and the gigantic flashing number two, which oddly is present even when there is no second player, although that was kind of weird, but having the gigantic flashing number one gave me like an anchor point, right? And I would just say, I think the quarterback has the ball. I haven't thrown it or handed it off yet. Oh, wait, I must have just handed it off because now the giant flashing number one is over yonder, right? And so I kind of used that. Someone who, as you said, understood exactly the mechanics of the plays a little better would probably feel the rhythm of the timing. Like, oh, he didn't hand it off yet, but he's just about to. And so I'm about to switch control to this other player. But for me, I was just like, where's the number one? There it is. Okay, got
it. This is something I'm going to shoehorn into visuals. It's really more of a mechanical thing. I got a lot of stuff in mechanics, and so I don't want to miss it, which is that the start menu visually did not really give me a strong idea of what the ideal play style is, right? So there was a whole bunch of different menu options, and I'm sure each one is
you mean
the
game mode?
Correct. All the different game modes, right? So like to me, I was like, okay, what I like, obviously any player wants to do is I want to play a season, like I want to be the Denver Broncos because I am by marriage legally obligated to play as the Denver Broncos. Although when I was playing Tecmo Bowl, I was getting my business wrecked so hard that I was like, I don't think you want me playing the Denver Broncos anymore, honey. I think you want me to make the other team the Denver Broncos, and then I can play whoever, and then the Broncos will win because I'm getting wrecked pretty badly here. I think the first game it was like 0-56 or something like that. It was atrocious.
That's when your coach comes out and walks you off field and gives you some orange slices and water and has to explain to you what the mercy rule is.
Well, I mean, actually, I know one comedian at one point said, because there was a football team that's having an atrocious year, and he said, like, nah, man, I've got a lot of respect for those players because imagine going into your job every day for a year and doing it wrong and still going home in a Bentley making millions of dollars. Are you kidding me? They're geniuses. But all of that being said is, so I wanted to like play a season, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to play, and I just selected like this line, like I think this is a season play, but then they make you go in and select which teams are computer and which teams are not. And the default is everyone's a computer, right? So I went in and selected it, and it was like, cool, here's the end result. And I'm like, what just happened?
That is a weird, and I agree with you that this is walking the tightrope of mechanics. But the reason that I will say this fits into visuals is because there's the like start menu, right, where you choose the game mode you want and the players or the teams you're going to play as. Are you just playing one game, or do you want to do a whole season, right? All that stuff, you have to make all those decisions up front, obviously. And then the only other menu you really interact with is the play selection screen, right? Do you want to run the ball in one of these 4 ways? Do you want to throw the ball in one of these 4 ways? And that screen is really elegant. And I literally have in my notes, they should have made the guy who did that screen also do the game setup screens, because I did literally the exact same thing where I was like, all right, I'm going to play this team and I'm going to go up against that team. And it just showed me the final score. Did I just run a simulation and not even get to see it?
Yep. Yes, you did. And I was just kind of like, all right. And so I did it again, and it just ran the simulation again. I'm like, I am missing something fundamental here. And so it is weird to me that that's the default, is for the game to masturbate itself.
Well,
like, it's
because
just,
that's near as I can tell, that's what that mode is like the simulation mode, because their statistics and their models are supposed to be so realistic. And this is why I say this fits into visuals and this is not mechanical, because you could make an argument about like, oh, it's weird that they include this at all. Like, oh, it's weird that they make that the default when you select that option from the menu. But the reason that all of this to me is predominantly visuals is because the menus are so overwhelming. There's so much information on the screen in a NES font that is all capital letters and kind of hard to read. And there's player statistics and team statistics, and those are football-y things that would make sense outside of the context of the video game. But then you also have all these video gamey things. Do you want to play a single game? Do you want to do a simulation or whatever the hell it is they call it? Do you want to play a whole season? Do you want to go into the settings menu or like it's just so much visual overload, and you don't really get any, like when you run the little simulation, it literally just shows you the score, like a scoreboard with like Q1, Q2, half, Q3, Q4. And I was just like,
honestly, this is not something I generally suffer from because of, basically having an overwhelming amount of confidence and very, very little knowledge that makes for not generally having decision paralysis. Not always a good thing, but actually it's generally a bad thing. But that being said, no, but I mean, like, I don't generally suffer from decision paralysis. I kind of did with this game because there's so much information that is given to you all at once. If it wasn't for the fact that I was sitting down to play this game to review it, there was a strong part of me that just was like, walk away. Like, you don't, it's just kind of like when you walk into a restaurant and there's, 30 people behind you at the line, and you finally get up to the register, and then all of a sudden you find out that the menu items that you thought were there were actually just, header menu items. And now you've got like 50 bajillion things to choose from. And you're like, I don't know. A coffee. And it's like, well, do you want a venti or a grande? I'm like, I don't know what any of that means. Just give me a coffee. Can I get a decaf iced coffee? It's like, oh, we don't actually have decaf iced coffee. We can give you regular coffee and then put ice in it, or we can give you a decaf iced Americano. And I'm like, I don't know what the difference between those two things are. That is actually a real story that happened to me. And I looked it up, and I can't seem to retain what the difference is between coffee and Americano. But all that being said is, that's the feeling I got from this game was, just this overwhelming amount of information being shoved at me all at once. And I was like, okay, so then I just kind of went through initially, and I just turned everyone to a CPU, from CPU to human, and that seemed to get the job done, which also is counterintuitive because I'm like, is this going to make it so that way I'm controlling both teams? but it didn't.
Yes, but you have to use the other controller with your feet.
Okay. And then you have to use your butt brain, so that way you can't cheat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like screen watching. So butt brain for the feet, head brain for the
Gotcha.
hands.
Gotcha.
So this is I really cannot emphasize enough, if you have not played this game or you haven't played this game in a while, nothing we just described is mechanically flawed, right?
No.
The reason I'm harping on this so hard in visuals is because the fact that this game has all of these statistics running under the hood and they let you be aware of them as the player is awesome, right? Like, oh, I want to know the yards, what do you call it, rushing, the yards rushing stats for this running back because maybe I don't want to use him in plays because he sucks. Like, you can see all that crap is in there. And I'm sure modern games have all of that and way more because, everything's friggin' Moneyball now. But the way it's conveyed to you, what is statistical information that you can safely ignore and still play the game? What is running a simulation? What is playing a single game? Like, I accidentally, on one of the times I sat down to play this, I accidentally played a single game and I happened to win that game. And then when I did, and it just threw me back to the title screen, I was like, Did I
do it?
Did I win it football? Like, I thought.
Did I football?
I thought the game.
Come on, football.
I thought the seasons were longer than that, right? And it took me a minute of like, wait, which menu option did I select that created that experience? Because it's not obvious. Like, and this is where there's this bizarre clash because my sports literacy is relatively low, but it's not zero. And my games literacy is quite high. So the fact that I was struggling to navigate these menus because of all the clashing information and just the volume of information that's being thrown at you on every single screen, I was like, this is not my fault. This is bad menu design.
This will go into a kind of a theme that I'm going to probably recall a number of times. So if I bring it up more than once, deal with it. So is that I believe that this game now for like Madden 2019 and all this sort of stuff where there are like really amazing visuals and they do a better job pushing the fantasy of it. I think that there's something to be said for that. But a game like this where the visuals, you're not playing this game for the visuals, right? It is, right? So where the visuals actually aren't that amazing as far as like graphical fidelity or anything like that, I think this would be better served as like a tabletop RPG. Because it is. I mean, think about it, right? You've got tons of stats, right? Like, let's just say books. Let's just say that there was a handbook that you could hand the player, a player's handbook, if you will, that had all of the different, like stats and all sorts of stuff. You could build all of the characters, right? Either off of models created from actual characters, or you could build your own characters using some kind of a point system, right? That, had all of their stats. And then you aggregated all of these stats into the teams, and then all you need is just the randomness. So if only there was some kind of a random number generator that was physical that you could roll that could generate a random number, let's just say hypothetically between a 1 and a 20, right? That could then determine whether or not your play was successful, and if successful, how successful. And actually, while I'm on this little kick, the way that, well, no, that's mechanics. I will touch on this again in mechanics, but no, I think that this game would, because of the amount of it, when we're talking about it, basically what we're talking about, the problem is cognitive load. They are throwing way too much at you way too quickly. All of it's information that you can get, but you're expecting to be able to power through the menu in about 10 seconds, So your brain is naturally trying to process all of that visual information in about 10 seconds. Whereas if you sit down with a book, your brain says, like, I'm going to have to chug this for a little while. So it could be laid out even similarly. But if you're not trying to like get it all into your brain that quickly, I don't think it would be as big of an issue. So the moral of the story is, I think that the issue that we're struggling with is visual representation causing too much cognitive load. And I think it's because fundamentally this is the wrong forum to have this type of game.
So I actually mostly agree with you. I think if we really were going to go way off into the weeds, I think you could take the game of, most sports games, really, all of them possibly, and
Yeah.
and do them as tabletop RPGs, which I guarantee you has already been done.
Oh, certainly.
Right. Like this has definitely happened. But I think just like some people enjoy Final Fantasy, but not Dungeons and Dragons, there is something to be said for the physicalness of it, having a visual, having the sound effects, right? That is all stuff that I'm totally fine with, and I understand because I like Final Fantasy, but I also like Dungeons and Dragons. So I get that they kind of serve different, they scratch different itches, right? That being said, when you are thinking about a football game and the 175 players plus their kids that they brought to work that day on both sides of the line of scrimmage, it's, see, I know some sports stuff. There's
Yeah, man.
there's
You're doing good, champ.
yeah, there's an expectation in my mind that that is the part that will be visual cognitive overload, not the menus to get to the gameplay. And that is the thing that is just driving me nuts, right? And I know we're beating this horse pretty hard, but like it was maddening that once I got into a game, I did not feel like I was suffering visual cognitive overload, but on the menus I did. Like I just it's a weird feeling to have that kind of an inversion.
Yes. Sorry, I got really excited about something, which was, as you were saying that, I was like, okay, let me double check this, because apparently I am just going to be the Oracle.
You're my man in the chair.
Yeah, man, I'm the man in the chair. But the thing they brought up, which I thought was the name of the game, it is just the name of the article, unfortunately, which is Dungeons and Dragons and First Downs.
Nice.
And right, and it's just the name of the article, the one of the games, because it's a list of tabletop RPGs, and one of them is First and Goal, which is that's good. But I'm like, no. Now, if we ever create a sports RPG, it has to be called Dungeons and Dragons and First Downs. Like it's an amazing RPG name. But
I mean, wouldn't you shorten that to Dungeons and Downs?
That's even better. See,
we workshop.
This is why collaboration's important. Yeah, that's why collaboration's important. I swear I had more stuff for visuals, but I don't know.
So I'll give you my last significant visual note, and this is going to sound like I'm kidding, but I swear to God I am completely serious. During the little cutscenes, whenever the crowd is visible in the back, particularly like when you make a touchdown or when your field goal is good, a successful try, I believe it awkwardly says, which if that is the official football term for that, that's weird. So you all know. But when you can see the players as if you were down like at field level, so you can see the audience behind them, they use this insane rainbow filter to designate the audience. And I have no idea what that is supposed to represent, because if it was supposed to be like people moving back and forth, it would be blobs of color that move, not blobs of color that stay still and rotate through colors. But I swear to God, I think it looked awesome. I loved it. I don't know what the hell it's supposed to be communicating other than like it's like visually stimulating. So there's a lot of like emotion to it, even though it doesn't literally make any sense. And it's not trying to be an artistic representation of any kind of actual physical thing that I could think of, but I think it looks great. Like every stupid time I scored a basket point, I was like, yay, the crazy rainbow thing. But then even when the opposing team scores a basket run, then they also get the crazy rainbow background. And I was like, this actually, takes some of the sting out of it, because I sort of love the way this looks.
No, I agree with that. I think that, like the visuals to me were very kind of double-edged, in the sense that there were definitely some areas where I was like, the actual visual on the play itself, like the gameplay visuals, I was like, take it or leave it. I think my imagination could do a better job. But on all of like the cutscenes and all that, the animation was pretty solid. And yes, successful try is correct. Like it is when you are trying for an additional point after a touchdown play, right? That if you are able to accomplish that try successfully, it is called a successful try, and the referee signals that it was a successful try.
Okay, so we're just going to do one back and forth on this, and then we have to move on.
Okay.
Could you not then call all points in all sporting events where there are teams competing against each other successful tries a touchdown? You successfully tried to make a touchdown. You successfully tried to sink a basket. You successfully tried to run around the bases. Like, you could just call them all that.
Well, not for me because I'm too cool to try.
Ha! We're going on to audio now.
Audio. So you're going to give a huge, long, well-articulated thing, and as you're doing it, I'm like, I have to be able to respond to this in 7 words or less.
Yeah, I said one volley at most is all we were going to do,
volley.
and you
We're
were.
good.
That was like I served, and you just threw your racket and went back into the locker room. You're just like, nope.
And muttering to myself, one volley. Audio. So, okay. So by this point, when I was starting to take my audio notes, I had clearly become displeased with the game. So,
hey man, don't give up the ending.
So I know that I generally rely on you pretty heavily for the audio notes. I'm going to have to continue to do so because mine aren't, as I'm now rereading them, very productive. So I did not find the music particularly enjoyable in this game. It's very Nessy, and there's so much Ness music that's iconic. I mean, we were literally before the show just gushing about how amazing Castlevania's music is, right? This isn't that. I couldn't tell you why exactly. It was grating. It was very like shrill and pitchy. And so the note that I have is the fact that there is no music while you are trying to pick your play is a godsend.
The music in this, and this may be a coincidence, or this may be just a thing they did on purpose in the game design. The music is more akin to what I think of as the music when you actually attend a live sporting event. So if you've ever been to a football game or a basketball game, any kind of, American team-based sport, and I would not be surprised if this is true all over the world for cricket and rugby, right? Sports that aren't super popular here in the States. They'll play lots of music, but it's like for a second, right? They'll play, like the stomping part of like "We Will Rock You," or they'll play, like right? And it's like they're not playing songs. You're not into club. It's not the top 40, right? It's like little bits of music to like jazz you up, and I would not be the tiniest bit surprised if I fired up Madden 2020 if they have licensed the exact kind of music that they would play at a real football game for 3 seconds as a play is about to start, or while the ref is, debating with the other refs about ref things, right? Like that is probably what
about whether or not their shirts are black with white stripes or white with black stripes.
Ref things.
Yeah, ref things. Yeah.
So, God, which is it? So I think that is what this music is trying to emulate. But as far as I know, it's all original music, right? So there's no recognizable rock tunes. There's no recognizable hooks from super famous songs. It's a little ditty written probably for this game or for this series of games that they use over and 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 over. So when you like every kickoff, every touchdown, every victory, they all use the same little musical beat, and they're all very short. But that's also why during like the play selection screen, there's no music, because there wouldn't be. That's why during like halftime, there's the halftime song, because that's supposed to be the halftime performance, right? And that gets a sustained bit of music from the minute that cutscene starts to the second it ends, right? So I have a suspicion that the overall lack of music and weird repetitive punctuated bits of music is trying to emulate that guy in the booth playing snippets in the stadium that you don't hear when you're watching on TV, or you mostly don't hear when you're watching on TV. Like that's the sense that I got. But all of that speculation aside, it's really high pitched, it's super pitchy, and it's really repetitive, right? So even if that is what they were going for, it's not super enjoyable the first time. I was actually pretty okay with it, but no matter how much you like it, it gets repetitive, real repetitive.
Yeah, no, I think that, again, I rely on your analysis, but I did not like it. And then, one thing you got to touch on is the hut. Yeah. The fact that, first of all, it goes on forever unless
until you snap the ball.
Until you snap the ball, and I don't think there's a delay of game in this game. At least I didn't experience it.
I know that one time, out of curiosity, I let it go for what felt like about 10 to 15 seconds, and nothing happened. So yeah, I think that's one of the rules they're not simulating.
Right. Yeah. So I think, So like I said, it was just kind of like, if they just went like hut, and then just waited until, it was, because I'd say, it's an audio cue for whether or not the game is being played, but there's quite enough visual for that. This isn't like Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, where a guard becomes aware of your presence, but they could be off screen. So they make a little like as they run towards you, and that's good because there's a lot of motion on the screen, and you might miss it. There is none's motion on the screen, and then an explosion of motion on the screen, right? So you're never really forced to guess whether or not. Just like in real football, you don't have to guess whether or not a play is happening or whether or not people are getting set up for it,
So you give yourself a really hard time for your troglodyte ears, and you are completely right to do that. Please continue that long-running gag.
Sorry, what?
But I want to tell you something that I think will help you feel a little better about your ability to process audio information and interpret that, like how it's impacting the experience. In Tecmo Super Bowl 2020, one of the modded versions that I mess around with a little bit when we still had this ridiculous gimmick in mind, that is one of the things they changed.
Oh, excellent.
If you're in control of the ball and you select a play, the quarterback will hut, I think 3 to 5 times, and then stop. No matter how long you sit there, he does not continually hut for the rest of time. Whereas in the real game, he will hut until the cows come home. And so you're right. Like you're not wrong to think that is annoying. People who think this game is amazing also modded that out of the game.
They're like, this is a bridge too far. This is just too much.
Yeah. But you should feel like justified that you not only, noticed it and thought it was annoying, but like you were cognizant of the impact it has on the experience of playing the game.
Well, and aside from that, I can't think of any other places where there were any audio cues that were directly in service of gameplay, like where I was being fed information through the audio that I wasn't getting visually, which again is fine. I can't think offhand of places where they could have added some additional audio cues, maybe somehow on a pass play when somebody's like way far away from you, like off screen, if there was a way to kind of like auditorially let you know they're available.
Not yet. I'm not there yet. Yeah. Not yet. No, wait. Okay, I'm there. Throw it now. Sex joke.
Anyways. But again, we can't spoon feed everybody, right? There's a sex joke in there somewhere. Y'all figure it out. That being said, but that being said, is that when the player that you're passing to is so far away that they are off screen visually, I think that's good because it should be harder to see and understand what's happening. They're a bajillion miles away, So yeah, I can't really think of. I definitely didn't pick up on any other places where they were repeating me stuff. through the audio, I can't think of that. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing because I can't think of any place where I would have added stuff.
Well, I think this is where the visuals and the audio are tightly coupled in that the bird's eye view obviates away what would in a more realistic football setting be super useful audio information, right? If I am looking downfield because I am getting ready to throw a pass and into the basket to score a point, to score a goal, how much can I screw this up? So, right, but I'm relying
Keep trying.
I'm relying on audio information around me, like, am I about to get QB sacked, right? Like, if there's a dude running up on my side, the audio information of that might be useful. And in a video game, especially because now that I have small children, I have started playing more video games with headphones on. I can imagine in like a stereophonic, surround sound game, the sound of footsteps getting increasingly louder would be very tense and exciting. And it's like, oh, the dude's coming for me, right? Like, I got to get rid of this thing. When you have a bird's eye view, none of that is necessary. You always know exactly where everyone is at all times. You know if they're about to tag you or not because you can see it clearly. There's nothing, it's not like the ball whistles as it flies through the air. There's no place where audio information in this game, because of the visuals, gives you additional information. When the whistle blows because a play has finished, you lose control of all the characters on screen. The whistle didn't tell me to stop moving. The fact that the controls stopped responding told me to stop moving, right? So, like, there's
the fact that right when the play ended, my robot body gave out on me and I collapsed in a heap on the field as the coach got his player hook and hooked it under my soft palate to drag me back to the huddle to pick the next play.
Yeah, dark. But yeah, I mean, this is something that I noticed because as the music was starting to grate on me a little bit, I was like, could I play this game on mute? Yeah, I think I could. Yeah. I think I actually could. And I didn't get to that point where I was like, I'm going to start playing this on mute. But because of the intentional, and I'm perfectly fine with, lack of realism in the visuals, particularly with the camera choice, that actually obviates away so much you could potentially get in a more modern experience from things like, surround sound. So yeah, it's not to rag on the sound effects in this or the music in this so much as to say none of it matters. And if you're fine with it, fine. And if you're not, also fine, because you're not missing anything.
Well, and I don't know if current Madden does this. I would assume that they would do this, and if not, then at me, and you can just, or they can just have this idea. They can just have this idea. But it's like if you're the quarterback, right, and somebody breaks through the line, and there is a now high likelihood of you getting sacked. I could see them like slowing down the control inputs, but also slowing down the basically going to bullet time, but then like slowing everything down and like hearing everyone's breath and hearing your heartbeat as like you are about to get sacked. And especially what could be a cool little meta commentary is then if basically your choice was continue to try to complete the play or to kind of duck and move to prevent yourself from being injured from being sacked.
Ooh.
Like so
dark.
Dude, football's dark, man.
It's a dangerous sport.
It's a war metaphor.
Yeah, it's a war metaphor where people still beat the ever-loving crap out of each other, like in war.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like a war reenactment where they used real guns. Wait a minute. But I think at that point it's just war.
Just war, yeah.
Yeah. It's a war reenactment, only we use real guns. So war then. It's true. But yeah, something like that where like I could see that really adding to the fantasy aspect, of like having everything slow down. You hear like the thump of your heart, and like the heavy breathing of both you and like the slowly louder breathing of the person coming at you, and like the hitting of. Now, overlay that onto the visuals of this game. Like that makes no sense, right? So again, like, could they do more with it now? Absolutely. Should they have done it then? Nah, I'm good with what they did.
So this is actually, I think, an interesting segue into mechanics because I'm fairly certain that modern games do have a concept of things like injuries, where it's like, oh, this player, they done played too hard, and now
Yep.
they need to sit down and have an orange slice, right? And that's I don't I am not nearly enough into any sport to I don't want that kind of realism in frankly any game, right? There's a reason I'm okay playing a game like Uncharted where I could get shot 50 times because I don't want to get shot 50 times because from what I've heard one will do it, right? I don't really want to sit I don't really want to sit down to my sport ball simulator and then find out that the character I like playing as because they're really tall or they're really fast or they're really good at the sport of sport ball has like a broken knee or a ruptured disc in their spine. Like that's not what I come to video games for personally. So
Right.
I felt like mechanically this game actually had a surprisingly sophisticated balance of things that really happen in football and not things that really happen in football because you don't want to deal with any of them. So a great example is sometimes you fumble the ball. And it's pretty rare because professional football players shouldn't be doing that. But like it adds like tension and excitement when a pass is intercepted or when you screw up the kickoff and it's on sides and like you actually recover it because they didn't get to it in time, which you're like not always supposed to do. And like when a safety happens, right? Like these kind of edge cases in football that in most sports, I think most people would say it's the edge cases that are like the things that make the highlight reel, right? Like, oh, this team, like they were up by 6 and they thought for sure they were going to get it. But then, oh God, a pass goes crazy and it's intercepted and he runs 90 yards for a touchdown and they success try. And so they get the extra point. And now, right. Or like a 2-point conversion, right? See football terms. I know some of them, right? But like the things, the things that like, our edge cases in real sports are often the most exciting things. And because this is a fantasy simulator of a game you could really go play, you want more of that stuff. But what you don't want is broken angles and traumatic brain disorders. Like, please leave those out. And to me, to me, this is the right balance of yay, an interception and, boo, an interception is happening constantly.
Yeah. I definitely I agree with you in part. I agree with you that
you want more traumatic brain disorders.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, like just because if the idea of the fantasy, so like, and I'm trying to reconcile this with your Nathan Drake example, which is that like basically when you're the Indiana Jones fantasy, the fantasy is that you are superhuman.
And that was actually a bad example because he's not being shot. The point is that when you die, it's because you were shot once, not that you were shot for the 40th time. But
yeah, it's your luck running out.
There are lots of games where the character is being shot and you have a health meter. So the metaphor withstands. The specific example was a poor choice.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, like even with Doom Guy, where it's like he's getting shot, but he's Doom Guy, Doom Guy, you don't go into no wheelchair. But all that being said is that I think that, when managing, if the purpose is, you are managing a football team, then managing their injuries, I think adds to the fantasy. And honestly, it's kind of, to me personally, and this is just my own, like kind of outside of the game view of it, is the more kind of awareness we can kind of raise about the fact that this is a brutal sport. I'm kind of pro just because, I mean, I played football for all of 2 years in high school, but like I still have an injury that bothers me every so once in a while about it. And I play left bench, so like, for the people who are, really playing it, it's pretty brutal. So I think again, and I think that it is an option that you should be able to turn off. Like to say, like, I don't want to deal with that, so I don't want to manage that part of the game. So turn that off. In the same way in like Civilization 6, I can turn off barbarians, like I don't like that mechanic. So I just turn them off. They're gone, But I think having something like that in there to kind of like remind people, it's like, hey, just so you know, yes, this running back is amazing. They can only play for so long until they're horribly injured out of the game, I think is a plus. That all that being said, I'm going to, but yeah, I do think that the frequency, however, of edge cases I thought was appropriate.
All right, hang on. We've probably done as much Googling in this episode as we've done in like the last 10 combined or more.
Oh, easily.
But
yeah.
So not only do modern Madden games have injuries, but I found a Reddit thread where people are arguing about whether or not these certain injuries are appropriate. Like, he shouldn't be out for 8 weeks. This is bullcrap. And it's like, that is exactly what I was afraid of, which is because these are virtual people, even though they're all real people that have just been virtualized, there's this complete separation from reality where people are just like, rub some dirt in it, get back out there. It's like, but my spine is broken. Rub a lot of dirt in it. Fine. But
yeah, come on.
What I really love is the very first comment on this thread is, I'm a wuss and disable injuries, which is exactly what you just said.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, so good. I mean, like that to me is, a good, happy medium where, yes, the injuries exist. Yes, we can drive that point home if we want to.
And they're on by default.
Right. And they're on by default. But if you're like, this is cluttering up my game. I get it. This is cluttering up my fantasy, my game experience, then fine. That being said, is when you do get this kind of leads into another point that I had. So, there are edge cases, right? So interceptions, fumbles, things like that. If you do get an interception, or seemingly if the other team just successfully makes a long pass, you are now hopelessly behind, in the sense that like once P2 is like X distance down the field, then you're hosed, and
there are some weird rubber band physics, but I don't know if they're like, you got to just keep mashing A, or if there's some random number generation on the back end that's happening. But there were times where I caught up to people I had no business catching up to, and people caught up to me that had no business catching up to me. And then other times it was like they were on their feet and we were running on our knees.
Yeah. It's really weird. And so because of that, I would normally, like, once somebody broke away like that, I'd be like, well, they're gone, and just kind of moved on with life. So that was particularly frustrating because basically, and so then this is my other note, is that there's almost no reason to ever run the ball, because I did like a number of running plays, and like you slowly but surely slog your way down the field, right? But and maybe this is indicative of real football. I don't know. But, like I got the ball on the 30-yard line, and I did, running play, just again to kind of get a feel for the physics of it. And after about, 4 to 5 minutes, what felt like forever of gameplay, I was on like the 45-yard line. I'm like, oh, neat. This is great. And then I fumbled the ball and the guy ran it back for a touchdown. And I'm like, that was exhausting, about the amount of kicking and biting and screaming I had to do to just get that in order to just have it completely reversed. But then when I would pass the ball, all I'd have to do is eventually get one solid, successful pass, and my guy would just run it in for a touchdown almost every time. So the risk to reward of running plays versus running passing plays was, why would you do it? Like, passing was the clear superior option.
I mean, this feels to me like this is a place where their models broke down a little, because there are certain players on certain teams who run at impossible speeds, right? So there's literally a reference to this in Family Guy where they actually show real footage from the real game where Bo Jackson is just like running circles up and down, and like to the point where people, this is like a house rule. Like, you cannot play with Bo Jackson because it's not fair or fun, right? And so like there's a handful of players, spread across different teams where it's like, oh, that person always makes the reception. That person is almost impossible to catch once they start running the ball, right? Like just these little places where it's like, oh, this formula works for 99 out of 100 players, but for this one player, it gives them friggin' superpowers and totally sucks the fun out of the game, right? And it's
like
just
Gary Seinfeld when he's talking to Superman, and Superman's like, "Do you want to go cycling? Cycling with you isn't fun. Why not? It's just not."
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with you generally that passing, which I think is true of real football as well, like passing is more common than running plays because you risk so much on a running play. But it felt like the algorithm or the model or the statistics or whatever, like overwhelmingly preferenced passing plays. But when they preferenced running for certain players, it's broken, right? So there's like, mostly I would say their models held up in a pretty good way, especially for the time and the processing power. But man, when you butt up against the walls, like when you're Truman in the boat and the bow goes through the painted on clouds and you suddenly realize you've reached the end of the set, it's like, oh, here's the boundaries, found them.
Well, and from my seat, like honestly, the gameplay for, because once I got frustrated with running, and once in a blue moon I would run the ball, but I just basically, and then this kind of comes into the thing where my defense. So, how does defense work in this game? Here's how it works, to the best of my understanding, is it's like you and I both pick a number between 1 and 8, right? And my goal is to get our numbers as close as humanly possible, and your goal is to get them as far away as humanly possible, basically. Something like that, you know? So, or my job is, or I am trying to get higher and you're trying to get lower or whatever, right? So basically, long story short, is that like I pick a number, you pick a number, and then we see how these two numbers jived against each other. It's a really complex version of RPS, you know, where it's like rock, paper, scissors, and 15 other things. But it'd be basically like, actually, sorry, that's a better analogy. It'd be like if I've got my 6 Pokemon, you've got your 6 Pokemon, and I'm just trying to guess which one you're going to use, and then I'm going to pick mine, and maybe it's somewhat neutral. Maybe yours is better, maybe mine's better. Near as I can tell, that's how being on defense works, because I know for a fact it's not based off of my personal ability to play the game, because after a handful of times, I do just pick the defense and put the controller down, and made no difference whether I was actually doing stuff or not.
So, yeah. Okay. So one of the few things that matters during defensive play is, or actually offensive play. So when you are in a grapple with someone, right? And no DM wants to do the grapple rules, right?
Nope.
So when you're in a grapple with,
I think one time I gave your character gold to specifically not initiate a grapple.
You did.
I was like, I will give you 100 gold to not initiate a grapple right now.
Don't do this to me, bro.
don't do this to me.
That one I think was actually I was going to it's like detect magic. I was going to hold it for the maximum.
So this is definitely tangential, but no, what was happening was I put a treasure room in an area, and detect magic. Most people just use it to detect magic, but if you focus on for 3 rounds, the first round it lets you know if there is magic, and it is a cone-shaped emanation, right? If there is magic, the second one it lets you know how many auras and of what strength, and the third one lets you know what school of magic it's from, right? And so you're like, so there's like a treasure room, and you're like, I cast detect magic. I'm like, there's a tremendous number of magical items, and you're like, I focus on for all 3 rounds. I said, don't do this to me, bro.
Okay, one, I don't see how that was tangential.
Yeah, and then actually that caused me to change officially my house version of that spell, which was round 1, it gives you whether or not there are magical items. Round 2, it gives you number and strength. And round 3, it casts the strongest version of dispel magic known to the game and dispels the magic on all of the magical items. So it's actually a much more powerful level 1 spell, which I felt made me a generous DM.
Yeah, no, totally. What the hell were we talking about?
Super Tecmo Bowl, super. Yeah, no, but basically is how defense worked against
Oh,
offense.
yes.
And
Thank God.
yeah.
Okay, so I was really lost. You could have said anything. When you are in a grapple, you can mash A repeatedly to escape the grapple or be more successful if you were like the initiator. So that is a thing, but you're only controlling one on-screen player at a time. So you can directly influence your experience, but that's, as far as I know, that's it. The thing that I struggled with defense okay. This is going to either reveal something incredibly questionable in the design of the game or incredibly damning about my understanding of football, but I take no personal responsibility for either of those things, so I don't really care. But
I take no personal responsibility for anything. You should try that. It's way easier.
I've noticed. So when you are the ball carrying team, right? When you're on offense, you have 4 passing plays and 4 running plays that you can select from. When you are on defense, near as I was able to determine, you have 4 passing plays and 4 running plays to choose from, which is not how I understood football to work, because we are not the ones trying to make a score point. So the way I interpreted it was, we are trying to line up a defense against what play we think they are going to do. So if we think they're going to run this offensive play, we're going to do this specific defensive play against that specific offensive play, which I assume real football is not limited to 8 plays. So that is probably,
I think there's like 9
at least, but you know what I mean? So like I think it's a simplification of, you will be more successful if you directly match, like if you guess essentially, right? Like you picked a number between 1 and 8, and if I guess it exactly, then I am most successful at stopping you. But it didn't seem to guarantee success or failure in any case.
Well, and I think that's why because I started with the number analogy, but I think the Pokemon analogy is better. Is just kind of like, let's say that you pick a rock type Pokemon, right? So I don't know what you're going to pick, right? So if I'm like, okay, I think he's going to pick a rock type Pokemon. So, and in this case, like I say, you're picking a rock type Pokemon, so the game automatically selects a water type for me, right? So now I am very likely to be successful against you. It's not a foregone conclusion, because like there's a million different reasons why, like that mashup, you could still potentially win. But that being said, is that I am very likely to be successful. Then, if like I say, like, okay, I've got my water Pokemon because I think you're gonna pick a rock Pokemon, and you pick like, anything like a fighting type or anything like that, where it's like, okay, I'm not at a disadvantage, but I'm not particularly at an advantage either, And then there's I picked a water type Pokemon and you picked a grass type Pokemon, so now you are going to very likely defeat me. Like the defense I picked was, so near as I can tell, that's the way that it works, which is fine, and that's I perhaps the only way to really do it. But that means that me personally, there's no real reason for me to be on the field, because one, I don't understand the defenses well enough to follow my own team's plan, whatever it was. So I'm just kind of like, am I supposed to be? I mean, honestly, I had Vietnam flashbacks when I was in football. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So, I was like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this what I'm supposed? Am I doing it? Am I doing it right? Am I leaving somebody unguarded that's going to get passed to now? Like, I don't really know what's going on. So, and so then that brings me back to the fact that I think it would be better as a tabletop game, because again, it's all about the team, not the individual player, right? And you know what this whole system works almost identically to? Psionic combat in D&D. It's basically this. So it's just like this. The D&D already has systems for this, man. It Dungeons and Downs, like just make it.
We could write it, Brian.
Hasn't been written yet. We could do it.
So the more we're talking through this, the more confident I am that this is essentially what's happening, right? It's like it's a pick a number, get the right type of Pokemon, rock, paper, scissors kind of system. But what I'm realizing is that when you select any defensive play, which is a weird choice, you're not playing, you're opposing play. Anyway, when you pick your defensive alignment, then you, before the ball is snapped, which you don't have any control over, but I think the computer will hesitate for you, but before the ball is snapped, you can rotate through 2 to 5 defensive linemen.
Dudes.
Right? Yeah, 2 to 5 dudes. They are all dudes. So you can rotate through 2 to 5 dudes, and if you wanted to be a jerk, because the game mechanics are exploitable, you can always pick the center linebacker. I have no idea what you call that person. The center dude. And you can essentially...
The center.
The center. Even on the... I thought it was the center when... It's center on both sides.
It's the center on offense.
Yeah.
No, there's the defensive tackles and the defensive ends.
Okay, so you can pick a dude in the center or near the center and then just rush the quarterback always. And it is a nearly universal function. Like, it'll almost always work because you can clip through the bodies, right? Like, there's the collision detection on this is very specific to a sports game. It's not like collision detection in a platformer, right? So if you wanted to, if like you're the kind of person who sees this as a fun thing to do, whenever you're playing defense, you can just like tackle the quarterback repeatedly until the ball turns over. And that is a thing the game will allow you to do. You wouldn't probably get very far doing that against another human player. But like, this is another way that the defense is even more confusing, because not only do you have to understand the footballness of it, but you can exploit the video gameness of it in a way that is only video gamey. You can't clip through people in real life, as far as I know. So like,
you can.
Well, I can't clip through people in real life. This is why my football career came to a crashing stop. but
I can. That's why my career as a ghost is going great.
But this is just,
or as a home invader.
This is just like a weird thing about when I was playing offense, I felt like I was playing. When I was playing defense, I felt like it was just random number generation.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, no. When I was playing on offense, I felt like, oh, I am doing stuff. I am moving the ball. On defense, I literally would put down the controller, because I felt that a lot of the times when I was actively engaging with it, that I was more detriment than help. Like, that I was moving people so far afield of where they were supposed to be that I was doing more damage than good. I felt like, Stan Smith when, like he gets shot by the hunter, when he's like, I'm sorry, Stan, I just didn't know who was doing the most damage. Like that's me. I was like, dude, take me out. But the one other thing I just wanted to mention about mechanics was the fact that the tackle mechanic I did not care for, in the sense that you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to tackle, because if you do, you done.
Well, this is a weird about not being able to rotate through, because I mean, it's a 2-button controller. It'd be awkward to have to reach over and like mash select or something, but like, they do not allow you to rotate players once play has started. So if you throw a tackle and you miss, it's not like you can jump into the mind and body of a player who's still on their feet. That's not an option.
It would be so cool.
In modern games, I promise you that is possible, but it is super not in this one.
So, and yes, I agree with you that it is. And I'm sure that it's just done through a normal visual rotation of like, now you're in charge of this person. Now you're in charge of this person. Here's what I want. I want for Madden 2020, if it's not out yet, and if it is, then for Madden 2021, to do that exact same thing, mechanically identical, right? And do the visual, but like when you do the visual shift, I want to see a quick red mist go out of the one player's helmet and then into another player's helmet, and I want their eyes to turn red. And then everything else remains exactly the same.
Dark.
Come on.
So
because what I'm picturing now is like there's the like you're on defense and the quarterback is like backing up and he just sees like, like a person like jump and start to tackle him and then like realize that he's missed and then just zip into another person's head and like just people are just jumping left and right, like just creating this sea and all to the sound of da na 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 na. It's like people just keep trying desperately to tackle this. All of the wide receivers are way open because like just everyone is trying to kill the quarterback.
So where my where Jesus Christ, where my mind went with that was the animation when you cap into something in Super Mario Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
That's what I want to see. I want to see me, the player, shoot out of the quarterback like into the receiver as the receiver catches the ball, because now that's where I need to be, right? So there's a weird like elongated character model that like goes from like helmet to helmet, right? And it's got to make the cartoony like zip in zip out noise that it makes every time Mario does that. Like that to me seems more fanciful than a terrifying red mist
blood demon. Yeah, agreed. Especially if the animation, it's like you said, it's kind of like an elongated person, but it's the team's mascot.
Oh yes. I mean,
right?
More realistic would be if it was like the coach, but screw that guy. It should totally be the mascot.
Yeah, it should totally just be like like for the different Broncos, like a Bronco just like shoots out.
That's the spirit of the team.
Of the team, yeah, exactly. And so we're on the same page. Man, we should make more video games, or any. We should make any video games.
Lord.
You got anything else?
Oh, God no. I've completely lost the threads so many times. So here's my feelings about how this game held up, and I struggled with this in a way that may be unique to this game, because there's tons of times I've struggled with rankings for the games, and actually a lot recently where I've struggled with like exactly how I want to rank this. The thing that I struggled with...
Do you think that, sorry, just real fast, do you think that that's a sign of you becoming a more refined game reviewer?
I love that interpretation.
No, because I mean, like the idea is it's like, and to be fair, this is slightly tangential, but when we first started doing this, I remember being like, this game's good and this game bad, and now I'm like, well, I mean, I've seen this mechanic used in a number of different games. I feel that this game did a decent job employing it, but not the best, but also not the worst I've seen. So like, there's a whole lot more gray area behind it. So you're like, I mean, altogether, like, I don't know, man. It does some things well and some things poorly. It's supposed to like, this game did 3 things I didn't like, so it's dumb.
Yeah. No, one, I think you're actually right, but 2, I obviously prefer that interpretation because it's generous to me. But the thing that I struggled with that I don't remember struggling with when we played like NBA Jam, for example, because that's a silly, more cartoony. I mean, you could play as the Clintons for Christ's sake. Like that's not a serious sports game. But this game is trying to be a serious sports game. It's just doing it with very limited power, right? Just in the way like Pong is supposed to be tennis. It's not supposed to be silly. It's just the best they could do at the time, right? So I don't really care for sports games, generally speaking. Just like I'm not really that big into actual live, real human being sports. And so part of me is down on this game because I'm just not the target audience, and I really didn't enjoy playing it all that much, and I didn't think it was very fun. And I had to play a game at a time. I believe it's a real quote that people say, like, football is a game of inches. Like, reviewing this game was a game of inches. Like, I couldn't play more than one entire game at a sitting. Like, I couldn't get through a whole season. There's no way and I'm someone who plays 70-hour JRPGs. Like, I couldn't. And it's just because I just didn't find it fun. I didn't think it was bad. The game is not a bad game, but I am super not the target audience to where I was just like, I'm not really getting anything out of this. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not having a bad time, but I'm not having a time. Right. And so what that kind of led me to was I was like, how do I rank something that I'm feeling that ambivalent about? And I was like, I have to go with my opinion. And so being realistic that this is more of a my opinion ranking than objectively ranking the game, I had to give this nostalgia goggles, because I have played sports games that I found engrossing and interesting and fun and exciting, and even the realistic ones, not just the cartoony ones, but I just couldn't get into this. And I think I maybe could get into a more modern game that's got some more engrossing realistic elements, but this didn't do it for me. Like I had to go full nostalgia goggles. And I will say, with the asterisk on that, if you like this kind of game, particularly from this era, like simple sports games, not all of the modern nonsense, really do go to the link in the show notes. Go check out tecmobowl.org. That community seems awesome. Like, I have nothing against any of those people. I'm just not one of them. So for me, I went full nostalgia goggles.
So I have never done this before, but I for me personally, I think I have to abstain from a vote. And here's why. Yes, here's why. I fucking hated this game. Like, I hated it. But I didn't realize it until I was playing. I have never played any sports video games like that were not ridiculous over the top, like where you're playing as a tank and it's baseball, or, playing as like you said, like playing as the Clintons in NBA Jam, something like that. Right. I've played those types of games, but that's like saying, I've played
Mario Kart is not Forza.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I played Mario Kart. That's kind of the same thing. I was going to say, like I played, playing Mortal Kombat does not prepare you for a boxing simulator, So like, I did not like this game, but I have no basis for comparison did it learn, does it hold up to modern standards as a video game? It's difficult to say because I have no examples of modern video games of this genre to compare it to, So, because I just haven't played it, so I can't really speak to game feel. There's so many things that I can pick out things that I don't think that it did well, and I can pick out things that, it did do well. But all that being said, like how it all comes together as an experience, I didn't like that experience, but I don't have any examples of what that experience is even supposed to be like. It's kind of like, saying like, well, I didn't like race car driving. It's like, oh, do you think that, but did you enjoy driving this car? It's like, this is the first car I've ever driven. I don't know. Like, I don't like race car driving in general, but I don't know whether or not I like this. So honestly, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to abstain from a vote, but in our 2020 year in review, I will circle back around and give this an honest review. So if you, stick with us, and then we'll do the top three, worst three. And if it's in one of those two, then you'll definitely know where I came out. But either way, I will circle back and give this one a true rating. All of that being said, you owe me a good game now. Like, and none of this like 80-hour long JRPG stuff. I know you've been going on about Final Fantasy, and it will be over my dead body if we play that one. I want to play something cool, something like hip and neat, like something like
the curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.